It all began with a dream, a vision of healing, empowerment, and transformation. A dream shared by a passionate young woman who had spent years building a reputation as one of the most empathetic and skilled hairstylists in town. But she was not just a hairstylist. She was a self-care advocate. She understood, perhaps better than anyone, that real beauty began from within. For her, beauty wasn't just about hair, makeup, or appearance. It was about healing. Her clients loved her. They trusted her not only with their hair, but with their hearts. She listened as they shared their struggles, divorce, depression, family trauma, and she would comfort them, not with just words, but with the gift of time. She gave them a place to talk, to breathe, to just be. Over the years, she began to feel the deep need for something more. She wasn't just styling hair anymore. She was becoming a lifeline for many women. What started as a gentle conversation during a haircut had evolved into something much larger, a calling. She could help more people, empower women to heal, and take control of their emotional and mental well-being. And so, she began planning a self-care program, a program where women could come together, learn, and be mentored. She would create a space where healing could happen, not just from the outside, but from the inside. Her vision wasn't just about beauty, it was about wholeness. It was a beautiful dream, one that would combine her deep understanding of beauty with her innate ability to help others heal. But the dream, like many, was also tangled with another force, family. Her mother, a woman with a strong personality and an unshakable belief in family, was her closest confidant. When she pitched the idea of a self-care program, her mother was on board immediately. The idea of a family partnership excited both women. They were close enough that this venture felt like a natural next step. A mother-daughter team. Together, they would take on the world of self-care. Together, they would change lives. Their collaboration seemed like a match made in heaven. Her mother brought experience in running a business and managing logistics, while she provided the creative vision, the emotional depth, and the passion for helping others. The self-care program, named after a concept of inner beauty and healing, began to take shape. They built an online presence. Their social media posts were filled with uplifting quotes, empowering stories, and before and after transformations. They sold hope, transformation, and empowerment. Their followers quickly grew. They launched online webinars, virtual workshops, and one-on-one coaching. Women from all walks of life began joining the program, seeking to better themselves, to learn to heal, to take control. The program promised peace, clarity, and balance, all words that resonated deeply with a growing community of women. At first, everything seemed perfect. Clients raved about the sessions. Women were empowered. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. The dream felt real. But beneath the glossy posts and the cheerful smiles, tension was building. It was subtle at first, hard to notice. A quiet disagreement here, an unspoken word there. Business partnerships, especially those involving family, are never without friction. But this tension wasn't about differences in vision or direction, at least not at first. It was about something more personal, more emotional. In a family business, it's easy to assume that trust is implicit. After all, these are the people who raised you, supported you, and shaped you. You don't question the motives of family. Or, at least, you're not supposed to. But as their business expanded, so did the pressure. There were financial concerns. Who would control the revenue? Who would make the final decisions about the program's direction? As the money began to flow in and the workload increased, small moments of miscommunication turned into larger disputes. Her mother, strong-willed and determined, was used to having control. She had run businesses before, and she wasn't shy about asserting her ideas. Her daughter, though, had a different vision, one rooted in authenticity and emotional connection. As the weeks went on, she started to feel as though her voice was being drowned out by her mother's more dominant presence. She tried to speak up, tried to assert herself, but the words never came out quite right. She didn't want to cause conflict. After all, it was her mother. How could she question her? How could she stand up to the woman who had raised her? And so she didn't. She bit her tongue and carried on. After all, this was their shared dream. They were a team. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. She began to feel increasingly isolated, and the stress of holding everything together started to take a toll on her. She felt like she was walking a tightrope, balancing her relationship with her mother and the emotional weight of the business. And the dream that had once filled her with passion now felt like a chore. The self-care program, which was meant to empower others, was beginning to feel like it was draining her. The cracks were small at first, subtle changes in behavior, a shift in her usual enthusiasm. She started canceling plans with friends, missing calls, and retreating into herself. The woman who had once been full of life was now quiet and withdrawn. When people asked how the business was going, her answers became shorter, less detailed. She was no longer the excited entrepreneur who had once shared her vision with everyone she met. She was tired, but no one could pinpoint why. It was becoming clear. Her mother, once her greatest ally, had become her biggest obstacle. Despite the growing strain, she couldn't bring herself to confront the truth. She didn't want to lose her mother. Not now, not after everything they had built together. After all, family is family, right? You work through the hard times. You forgive. You let go of resentment. You don't give up. But as the days wore on, she couldn't help but wonder if she was losing something more important than just the business. She was losing herself. This was just the beginning. The dream that had started with so much hope, so much passion, was unraveling. But no one saw it yet. Not the clients, not the followers, not even her mother. And she, too, was beginning to doubt whether this dream was ever truly hers. But what happened next would change everything. The self-care program that ended in murder. The dream that had once seemed so bright and full of promise was starting to show its cracks. To the outside world, she was still the same vibrant hairstylist, the same compassionate mentor, the same woman whose social media posts radiated hope and empowerment. But behind closed doors, things were changing, slowly, subtly, but unmistakably. The first signs were small. Conversations with her mother began to carry an undercurrent of tension. Decisions about the program that had once been easy to make together now became points of contention. Which workshops to launch first, how the revenue should be allocated, which clients should receive special attention. Every disagreement, no matter how minor, began to weigh heavily on her. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just business growing pains. Family disagreements happen all the time, she reminded herself. After all, she had chosen this partnership with her mother because she trusted her. That trust, though, was starting to feel fragile. She began questioning her own voice, wondering if asserting her ideas would cause unnecessary conflict, or worse, damage the bond she cherished. As the weeks turned into months, the small tensions began to accumulate into something heavier. She found herself second-guessing every decision, not because she lacked confidence, but because the stakes felt impossibly high. This wasn't just a business anymore. It was her reputation, her identity, and her relationship with her mother all tangled together. Her friends began noticing the changes first. They observed her withdrawing from social interactions she had once enjoyed. Phone calls became shorter, messages slower, and casual plans often canceled at the last minute. When they asked if she was okay, she insisted she was fine, masking the exhaustion that had started to seep into her very being. But even from a distance, those who cared for her could see the strain. Something was off. The pressure was compounded by the growth of the program. More clients meant more responsibility. More workshops meant more planning, more calls, and more expectations. And as the program gained visibility online, the public perception of her as a successful, inspiring figure added another layer of stress. Every post had to be perfect. Every message had to be carefully crafted. Every workshop had to meet the high standards she had set for herself. She began to feel trapped. The very dream she had worked so hard to build, the program designed to heal others, was now suffocating her. The sense of empowerment that had once fueled her had been replaced with anxiety, doubt, and fear of making a misstep. She began to notice that her mother's influence over the program was becoming more controlling. Suggestions turned into directives. Opinions were dismissed. Boundaries she had assumed were implicit were being ignored. Despite the growing tension, she hesitated to speak openly about her concerns. To challenge her mother would be to risk the partnership, and perhaps even their relationship. She found herself silently absorbing the stress, carrying it alone while maintaining the image of harmony for the clients, the followers, and even casual acquaintances. But the human mind has a limit, and the emotional strain began manifesting in small ways. She slept less, her mood fluctuated unpredictably, and her usual confidence in guiding workshops began to falter. The joy that had once defined her work was slowly replaced by fear. Fear of conflict, fear of disappointment, and fear of losing control over her own life. Tension is like a pressure cooker, and in her case, it was reaching a critical point. Conversations that should have been routine became arguments, or worse, avoided altogether. She began isolating herself, even from the few people she trusted outside her mother. The once strong network of support she had relied upon was now distant, either because she had withdrawn or because she had convinced herself that no one could truly understand the complexity of her situation. There were also subtle signs of manipulation and control emerging from her mother's side, though she may not have recognized them at the time. Questions about money became veiled accusations. Critiques about her methods were framed as concern. Every disagreement seemed to be filtered through a lens of judgment, making her feel small, insecure, and uncertain. The love she had for her mother now came with a shadow of fear. Even as the strain grew, she continued to push forward. She hosted workshops. She posted motivational messages online. She kept the program running. Outwardly, nothing appeared wrong. To the clients and followers, she remained a model of calm, competence, and inspiration. But internally, the dream was unraveling. Each interaction with her mother felt like walking on a tightrope. One wrong step, one misplaced word, could lead to conflict, or worse. The pressure wasn't only emotional, it was psychological. She began questioning her instincts. Was she overreacting? Was she imagining tension that wasn't there? Was she wrong to feel afraid? These questions became constant companions, gnawing at her confidence and leaving her mentally exhausted. And as the cracks deepened, a sense of danger started creeping in, even if she couldn't articulate it. Something felt off about the relationship with her mother. Something felt wrong about the dynamics of the program they had built together. She felt vulnerable in ways she had never felt before. Friends who later spoke about her state described her as different, distant, worried. They noticed subtle changes in her behavior. Her gaze often darted away when certain topics came up. She avoided direct confrontation, and she seemed unusually cautious in how she expressed herself. For someone so naturally confident, these shifts were alarming. The tension culminated in a series of incidents that, at the time, seemed minor, but in hindsight were ominous warnings. Arguments over workshop content became heated. Money matters escalated into extended, uncomfortable discussions. Moments of silence between mother and daughter carried unspoken weight, a tension that neither wanted to name, but both felt. By the end of this period, the dream that had once seemed so full of hope had transformed into a pressure cooker of fear, doubt, and mistrust. She was isolated, stressed, and increasingly aware that the world she had worked so hard to build was no longer safe, emotionally, financially, or psychologically. What her friends and followers didn't know, and what she herself may not have fully realized, was that the danger wasn't coming from the outside. It was coming from the person she trusted the most, the one she had partnered with to make the dream a reality. This is the point where tension becomes tragedy, where subtle cracks in relationships widen into irreparable fractures, where dreams, no matter how well-intentioned, can lead to devastating consequences. The stage was now set. The self-care program, which had once been a beacon of hope, was becoming the backdrop to something far darker than anyone could imagine. And in the days that followed, the silence and fear that had quietly grown would explode into a shocking event that no one saw coming. The morning began like any other, at least that's what everyone believed. She had worked late the night before, reviewing workshop schedules, responding to client emails, and posting motivational content to maintain the image of a thriving self-care brand. Online, everything appeared normal. She was still smiling in photos, still sharing encouraging words, still presenting herself as the calm, confident mentor her audience admired. But behind the polished posts and curated presence, something had gone terribly wrong. The emotional strain that had been quietly building for months had finally reached its breaking point. By mid-morning, concern began to spread. She hadn't answered calls or messages, something entirely out of character. Friends, colleagues, and loyal clients tried reaching her repeatedly. At first, they assumed she was simply busy or resting. She had been under pressure, after all. But as the hours passed with no response, unease turned into alarm. One close friend, someone who had worked closely with her during previous workshops, felt an overwhelming sense that something wasn't right. She had always been reliable and communicative. This silence felt different, trusting instinct over assumption. The friend decided to check on her personally. When authorities were notified and a welfare check was requested, no one was prepared for what would follow. The door was unlocked. It was a small detail, but one that immediately raised concern. Inside, the house was unervingly quiet. No background music, no movement, no signs of routine life. The silence felt heavy, unnatural. Then came the discovery. She was found lifeless. The woman who had dedicated her life to healing others, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, was gone. The news sent shockwaves through her community. Clients who had trusted her guidance struggled to process the loss. Friends were left in disbelief, unable to reconcile the vibrant, compassionate person they knew with the sudden finality of death. Social media erupted. The same platforms that once carried inspiration and hope now filled with grief, confusion, and speculation. Authorities quickly classified the death as suspicious. This was not an accident. While officials initially released limited details, one thing was clear. Someone had intentionally caused her death. The investigation immediately turned inward. There was no sign of forced entry, no evidence of a random attack. The focus shifted to the people closest to her, those with access, proximity, and influence over her life. Inevitably, attention turned toward her mother, the same woman she had partnered with to launch the self-care program. The same woman celebrated publicly as her mentor, supporter, and closest ally. Publicly, the mother appeared devastated. She expressed grief and heartbreak, speaking as a parent who had lost a child. To outsiders, her sorrow seemed genuine. But investigators are trained to look beyond emotion. They examine timelines, communication records, and financial activity, searching for inconsistencies. What they found was troubling. Behind the public image of a supportive mother-daughter partnership was a relationship under severe strain. Disputes over finances, control, and decision-making had been escalating. What once appeared collaborative had grown tense and emotionally charged. Conversations had turned confrontational. The environment at home had become increasingly volatile. Investigators narrowed their focus to the final 48 hours of her life. Phone records were analyzed. Emails and messages were reviewed. Social media activity was scrutinized. Every interaction was reconstructed to understand who she spoke to, who she saw, and what conflicts may have occurred. What became clear was that the answers did not lie with strangers. They lay within the walls of her own home. Messages exchanged between her and her mother in the days leading up to her death revealed mounting tension. While nothing appeared overtly criminal at first glance, the emotional tone suggested conflict and distress. Financial disagreements had intensified, particularly regarding control over the self-care program and its growing influence. Friends and colleagues provided additional insight. They described her as increasingly withdrawn, anxious, and emotionally exhausted. She had confided in some that she felt overwhelmed, trapped, and fearful, classic signs of prolonged emotional stress within a close relationship. As media coverage expanded, public fascination grew. The story carried a chilling irony. A self-care advocate, dedicated to healing others, had been killed within her own family environment. Headlines focused on betrayal, trust, and the dark contrast between the program's uplifting message and its tragic conclusion. As the investigation deepened, authorities formally identified her mother as a person of interest. Statements were re-examined. Timelines were cross-checked. Financial records were scrutinized for irregularities and signs of control or motive. Meanwhile, the community struggled to reconcile what they were learning with what they had believed. The mother-daughter partnership that once symbolized empowerment now appeared deeply fractured. The smiles, the workshops, the motivational quotes, all of it was reinterpreted. What once looked like harmony now seemed like a carefully maintained facade. Psychologists later emphasized a critical reality highlighted by this case. Family-related crimes often follow a pattern of gradual escalation. Emotional control, unresolved conflict, and manipulation quietly build until a breaking point is reached. In her case, the person she trusted most, her mentor, her partner, her mother, was now central to a murder investigation. Her death marked the moment when a dream turned into a nightmare. The self-care program, created to uplift and heal, became the backdrop for a story of betrayal and violence. Trust, family loyalty, and shared ambition, values that once fueled her success, were weaponized in ways no one expected. As investigators continued piecing together the final moments of her life, the narrative became heartbreakingly familiar. A young woman full of potential, silenced by the very environment she believed was safe. And as the truth began to surface, one reality haunted everyone watching. The danger did not come from a stranger. It came from someone who was always there. This tragedy left a community shattered, friends mourning, clients confused, and a chilling lesson in its wake. Sometimes, the greatest threat hides behind love, trust, and family. The stage was now set for the final chapter, the aftermath, the legal consequences, and the truths that followed her death. By the time authorities had completed the initial investigation, the community was still grappling with shock. The hairstylist, once a symbol of hope, empowerment, and healing, was gone, and the questions surrounding her death loomed larger than ever. How could a young woman, building a business dedicated to self-care, end up murdered by someone she trusted? And why had the person closest to her, the mother she partnered with, been involved in circumstances leading to her death? The investigation revealed unsettling truths. Police meticulously pieced together the final days of her life, analyzing messages, emails, financial records, and witness statements. They reconstructed her routines, interactions, and the dynamics of the self-care program she ran. One theme became immediately clear. The danger had never come from the outside world. It had been in her life all along. Discrepancies began to surface in accounts of her last interactions with her mother. Timelines did not match. Statements conflicted with physical evidence. Minor details, overlooked at first glance, began forming a pattern. Investigators saw mounting evidence that tension and unresolved conflict in the mother-daughter partnership had escalated dangerously in the days leading to the tragedy. It wasn't only disagreements over money or business strategy. It was about control, dominance, and emotional influence. The person she had trusted implicitly may have felt threatened by her growing independence, by her ability to lead, or by the recognition she received from clients and followers. Where mentorship and family support should have existed, suspicion, fear, and manipulation began to dominate the relationship. As the truth slowly emerged, the public's perception of the mother-daughter partnership shifted dramatically. The image of a perfect, harmonious collaboration gave way to a stark reality. The very bond that had been celebrated as inspiring had concealed a toxic and dangerous dynamic. Social media posts, once full of empowerment quotes and motivational messages, were revisited in a new light. Every smile, every caption, every workshop video was reinterpreted by a community now aware of the tragic ending. The investigators also explored financial motives, examining records from the self-care program and related ventures. While it was not entirely clear if money had been the driving factor, discrepancies and attempts to assert financial control emerged as possible catalysts for conflict. In many family-related crimes, financial pressure magnifies underlying emotional tensions. And in this case, it appeared to play a significant role. Interviews with friends, clients, and colleagues revealed additional insights. Many described her as a gentle, compassionate, and non-confrontational individual who had quietly endured stress and pressure. She had avoided confrontation, choosing diplomacy and restraint over direct communication. Unfortunately, this very approach may have contributed to her vulnerability. Her natural inclination to trust, to forgive, and to prioritize harmony made her susceptible to manipulation by someone she relied on completely. The investigation also highlighted a chilling psychological reality. Crimes within families often occur incrementally. Small disagreements, unspoken resentments, and emotional tension build over time, creating an environment where betrayal becomes possible. By the time an overt act occurs, the groundwork has been laid over weeks, months, or even years. In this case, months of stress, subtle manipulation, and silent conflict set the stage for tragedy. Community reactions were mixed. Friends and loyal clients mourned deeply, unable to reconcile the woman they knew with the shocking events. Meanwhile, others speculated about what could have been done differently. Could friends or authorities have intervened? Could she have recognized the warning signs earlier? These questions remained unanswered, haunting those who had known her personally and professionally. Psychologists later noted that one of the most dangerous aspects of familial betrayal is its subtlety. The person causing harm is often someone the victim loves and trusts the most. This creates a unique psychological trap where doubt, confusion, and fear prevent clear action. In her case, her deep bond with her mother delayed recognition of the danger and may have prevented her from seeking help when it mattered most. Legal proceedings began as evidence accumulated. Authorities examined motives, reviewed inconsistencies, and explored potential culpability. While the investigation was thorough, the emotional toll on family, friends, and the community was immense. People struggled to process grief while also grappling with a harsh reality. Trust, even in the closest relationships, can be fragile and, at times, deadly. The tragic outcome also sparked a broader conversation about family partnerships in business, emotional boundaries, and the psychological warning signs of dangerous relational dynamics. Experts advise that even the strongest family bonds can fracture under stress, and that clear boundaries, transparent communication, and professional oversight are essential to prevent escalation. Her death, while a personal tragedy, became a cautionary tale. It highlighted the importance of protecting oneself, even from those we love most, and recognizing when relationships, no matter how familial or long-standing, become toxic or unsafe. Her story illustrated that dreams of empowerment and healing, while noble, can be derailed by unspoken tension, fear, and betrayal. As the investigation concluded and legal processes unfolded, the lessons of her story endured. Family, friends, and followers were left with a haunting truth. The danger is often closer than we think. Trust, while foundational to relationships, must be tempered with awareness and boundaries. Empowerment, while powerful, cannot thrive in environments dominated by control, fear, or unresolved conflict. In reflecting on her life and the self-care program she built, one thing became painfully clear. The dream of healing that she had nurtured was tragically overshadowed by betrayal. Yet her story, while tragic, also serves as a powerful reminder. It warns others to be vigilant, to protect their emotional well-being, and to recognize that sometimes the people we trust the most can cause the deepest harm. Her life, her dreams, and her death leave an indelible mark. A story of hope turned to tragedy, of empowerment turned to betrayal, and of a world forced to reckon with the painful reality that sometimes the greatest danger comes from those closest to us. The self-care program that promised transformation ultimately became a lesson in caution, vigilance, and the high cost of misplaced trust. Her story reminds us all, dreams are precious, but boundaries and awareness are essential to survival, even within the family we hold dearest.